just a fort. The fort was built here, you can see why, because they could control the passing of goods and armies down in the valley. So the Barbaresco rock, the fort of Barbaresco, was a matter of dispute, which means wars, between the city-state of Alba, which is down there, and the city-state of Asti, which is just 20 miles in that direction. So they were fighting all the time during the Middle Age. One of the reasons of fighting was to control the Barbaresco rock. There was this tower, a couple of smaller towers, and then walls around. It was like a fort. And it was owned by Alba and then owned by Asti. All these went on until the 16th century. In 1560, the Duke of Savoy, which was a French dynasty, conquered the whole region of Piemonte and Liguria, moved his capital to Torino. Clay and calcium. Over there they have sand and chalk. Completely different soil. The Langhe originated from the earth as mountains, while the Roero is the Torino plateau that got eroded. In fact, Torino is higher in elevation than Alba. You go up to the Roero and then you stay up until you reach Torino. So different soil, different configuration, different origin, different wines. The Roero makes lighter style wines, less tannic, good to drink relatively young, and is a good soil for white. They have a local white grape, it's called Arneis, which is typical of the Roero. They also grow Nebbiolo grape, Dolcetto, Barbera, but they tend to be different from Barolo and Barbaresco, a little less tight, a little less tannic, a little easier to drink. But as you can see here, Barbaresco is very exposed to the valley and the river. While between the river and the Barolo region stands the La Mora ridge. So the river is on the other side of that high ridge, and most of the Barolo region is on this side. It means that the Barolo is not far away from the river, but it doesn't see the river. It's blocked. In fact, if you go to the Barolo village and you walk around the village, it's a very pretty, nice village, and you walk in a valley surrounded by hills. If you walk around Barbaresco, you walk on the top of the hill. The elevation on the sea level is exactly the same, 273 meters. So the same elevation on the sea, but very different morphology. Because of that ridge, because of that La Mora ridge, we have a slightly different microclimate here compared to Barolo. We have more foggy days in the winter, because the fog comes from the river and lingers on these hills more. In Barolo, the fog is on the river and is blocked by that ridge. So sometimes it's foggy here and it's sunny in Barolo. Wow. And during the summer, we have a little more humidity in the air. Again, the humidity comes from the river, from the valley, and hits these hills a little bit more. And in the early hours of the morning, in the summer, it's a little warmer in Barbaresco compared to Barolo, because again, the heat comes from the valley up and comes here a little earlier than in Barolo. Overall, because of all these different situations, in Barbaresco, grapes tend to ripe a little faster, and we pick our grapes usually 1 week earlier. The floor is extremely fertile, very rich soil. The hillside is poor soil, but the hills of Barbaresco got mixed with the valley floor a little bit more millions of years ago than the hills of Barolo. So when you look at the texture of the soil, it's the same for the two areas, calcium and clay. But when you look at the composition of the soil, we have more potassium here, more phosphorus, more magnesium. Things that the plant eat are a little higher in concentration here compared to Barolo. So the vines here have a slightly easier life. They tend to ripe a little faster, and they tend to make a slightly more gentle wine. Like in Barolo, they have to struggle more, and the wine, as an average, is sturdier and heavier on the palate. Not a huge difference, and the two wines could be mistaken one for the other, very much so. Mr. Cavazza told to 4 farmers, the local priest, the bishop of Alba, a couple of landowners that were living in Torino. He told to these people, bring your Nebbiolo grapes to the castle. We can make a wine here that rivals Barolo, and I know how to make it good. He was the director of the wine school, very brilliant, very generous man. So the wine that they started to make in 1894, not only they started to call it Barbaresco, and not only they started to marketed as an alternative to Barolo, but the wine was damn good because it was made in a very, very good way, and so it got a lot of reputation. So the unofficial or burning date of Barbaresco as a real wine is 1894, thanks to Mr. Cavazza and the cooperative that he founded in the castle down the street. And we homage Mr. Cavazza by putting his logo, the logo of his winery, on our reserve wine.